Okay.
Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody back to our work meeting. We will continue with item 3.7, which was the park ordinance update. Wendy.
Okay, so just going back to Black Ridge for a minute, we're going to look at moving the gates, and then we'll sounded like there wasn't really any specifics about hours, so if we can make those as consistent as possible with the rest of the park system, that's obviously my recommendation. But we'll look at the gate situation and see how we can mitigate traffic in and out of that facility for trail users and to help our neighbors. Skate park. We just had a little bit of conversation about the term dusk. We'll massage that a little bit, work with that word, and figure out some language that John can agree on that. It prohibits motorized vehicles in the skate park. That would include any scooters or they have little motorized razor scooters now. Prohibit those. Prohibits vandalism. It would also prohibit motorized vehicles, like the RC vehicles.
Vandalism already.
Do we have to?
Yeah.
Like expressly?
Yes.
I wish we could say
They will
use
find a way
common
around
sense
it.
and be nice. But
Okay.
We don't want, does that mean we have to go list like everything we could possibly think of?
And then they'll think of more that you'll come back and list then.
Sorry.
so
I was the same question. I was like,
prohibits animals at all, even if on leash. Prohibits portable ramps, rails, platforms, or any other structures from being erected.
so they can't build the armor.
Right. Any issues there?
Yep, just the dust one, I agree.
Okay. Open space and trails, we are proposing to add a section there to set times for access and closures. Chief Carr and I had some discussions about this.
Yes, we did.
He, well, I'll let you speak for yourself.
I'm probably way to the other side of what Wendy's thinking. Well, not terribly way to the other side, but it would seem to me that we would just leave it open all night. And before we get too concerned about that, really the people that would be utilizing it are your law-abiding, extreme, sporting type people. Like that guy who puts a lamp on and rides down hills really
If
fast.
you want to get up at 4 a.m. and go hike, you go.
Right, and one of the other issues that I would see come up is a lot of calls to law enforcement because there's headlamps on the hill, somebody's lost or needs help, when in reality they're riding their bike and it's bouncing around, and it's pulling people way back into the back country instead of being in the city for no real reason, right? So, Brian, do you have anything to offer on that? It's becoming a new thing, by the way, the biking at night.
Yeah, I think we'll see more and more users at night, and then also early in the morning and late at night. It's like trail.
Guys go out at 4 in the morning.
Is this allowed? Are we would be the only ones that have that kind of a policy that it's open all night long?
I think Quarter Canyon.
Quarter Canyon is used.
I just don't want to be the only one.
Well, here we need to think about locations, and that's got to be part of it.
Yeah, and there may be some concerns about neighboring houses that have bikes coming down at 2 in the morning.
Spotlights shining in there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Most of the
that's gonna be
time, those spotlights are really down because
At the ground
they
now.
can see the trail. They're not looking around necessarily, but just some thought that I think that's something we'll see. Probably requests from the extreme sporter that they want to come up there and ride those at night.
And we
see it
know
everywhere
people like to recreate early in the morning, especially in the summer when it's so hot during the day before work. So
up in Summit County, they're riding all night long and on the trails at 4 a.m. So something we'll see.
I mean, obviously this is open public land. I mean, at that point, there's very limited liability for the city. But are we, from a search and rescue standpoint, from a safety standpoint, what is the additional risk that we're looking at to our residents?
Search and rescue commander.
Well, I think as we talked about, people are going to go up there, right? You would hope that those that are riding at night are skilled and capable and prepared and aren't going to be problems. Those are usually not the people that we end up scooping up.
And we are preparing. We have an 8-man search and rescue team that works for the police department. We'll open that up to the citizens soon so that they can volunteer to be part of the search and rescue teams. But we'll be back in those hills, and there's going to be search and rescues.
And so liability is actually something that I do worry about because what's different is this is city-owned property. Well, I mean, we're not just, it's not just a trailhead opened up to, federal forest.
Yeah.
It is city-owned property, so we need to vet that out.
I would assume that most of this will be at, kind of at your own risk, and we have little liability. But I do agree with Jared.
It would have to be adequately posted, whatever
whatever
the
we need
requirements
to do
are.
What's
to
the
make sure.
liability?
Don't. I don't think there's a real, I mean, we have governmental immunities, and if it's waived, then we have insurance.
But we are expecting to go out at night and do search and rescues. I don't know, that's just gonna be the reality.
As far as
Yeah,
hours,
whether
I
the
really don't
trail's
care.
open or not,
We're gonna be
is you
doing that.
can't, and I understand the concern, but, you know, you can close the trailhead parking lot, but you can't close the trail.
It's like a sidewalk, in my
Yeah, anybody
opinion.
can access it
in some
yeah,
ways.
for sure. And you can access it from someplace other than where the sign was and go, I don't know what you're talking about.
And it really is hard to close that down like a sidewalk. It's public
Yeah.
property. We don't inhibit people from walking on that at 2 in the morning.
Exactly.
So, something to think about.
Prohibits fires, unleashed dogs, motorized vehicles.
Can we specifically put fireworks as well on that?
Yes, you can.
Not that we need to, but we
Right,
need
it's
to.
just another reiteration of use common sense.
What about smoking?
Smoking is, we can add that too.
Can we just specifically for that fire hazard?
Yep.
We have no smoking
already
in any
in the
public.
But in the
To
trails
reiterate
and
it
open
here.
specifically, being that they're gonna be up in the grasses, you know, somebody's getting behind there thinking that they can, you know, just reiterate.
How do you, that's a good. One of the questions was, do we allow hunting? Which we do allow hunting in the city. This goes to mixed use. Do you have bicyclists up there when we have archery or? I don't know.
That was just a question, we allow hunting in city boundaries.
But isn't there a very specific process to go through for the hunting?
So there is, you have to have.
State law.
Well, it is, but you have to have permission to be on the property, but it's just one of these things that we're prohibiting.
How do I hunt
And unleashed dogs.
How do I jump that tag?
Yeah.
Well, it's
I'm
private
pretty sure I can
property.
get permission. How do I
It's
get
the deer
that?
mitigation
So they
program.
go and do
That's
goose
what I'm
hunts
saying.
and quail and stuff to the north, right?
You're around here.
The morning of the Llewellyn incident, they were actually out, I think, on a dove hunt, is that right? And they were shooting over on the north end of the.
That's right, we kept
trail.
those calls.
Geese, but it was a legal hunt, and DNR was overseeing it, so. But it's one of those things with mixed use, there's gonna be 4,000 acres
Hopefully.
of property up there that we need to see over and make it safe for everybody.
So
I don't know,
for now, I would be inclined to say that we don't allow hunting until we can get that more flushed out and dedicated and clarified. I would have a concern with any weapons being up there actively being used on city property.
I don't know, I feel the same way, cause, I mean, hunting goes on, gosh, almost every day of the year, different seasons for different animals. Yeah, I mean, we can go up right now, like you said, birds, et cetera. I mean, I've been hiking we do some serious hiking, and we're on trails and there's guys hunting all the time.
And you will run into challenges because then you can't exclude a certain group
Yeah.
necessarily. It needs to be researched. I know in the canyons on the east side, the resorts that are renting from the Forest Service can't exclude hunters and allow bird watchers. So
Right.
I'm not sure if that would apply. to the
so
city.
Brian worked quite a bit on the East Canyons in Canyon Search and Rescue and Patrol, and might have some answers on that mixed use and what they employed up there to help mitigate some of that.
So we'll look into that. Maybe Justin and Brian, if you guys can help me weed through that one.
I think maybe
John?
the bigger concern, I mean, actual hunters are usually really, really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
It's probably what you're more thinking of is people that are recreationally shooting,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
It's happening every day
And that's
out there.
different.
Yeah, and that's not allowed. Just recreational shooting anywhere in the city is not allowed, is it?
So shooting is allowed anywhere in the city as long as you follow state code.
Which
So
is,
don't shoot at buildings, don't shoot from
600,
cars.
is it 600 feet from a structure?
They changed
Yes.
it recently.
Whatever
Did they
the
change
state
it
code is,
recently?
but we could, as a city, prohibit it if we wanted
I
to.
mean, not from cars right across the road.
like if you have a skunk in your barn, you can shoot it, right?
Right,
Well, what I'm thinking is, I
As
mean,
long as
once
you're
we
600 feet
get,
away from
Well,
houses.
there is a vermin clause, and you might be more familiar with the hunting
And all
rules
those
on that.
clauses.
but vermin,
I don't either.
But I think there is a vermin clause so that you can take care of your own
Interesting
farmland.
And
yeah,
particular
if there's a
livestock.
fox or a wolf coming
Or a
in,
raccoon or a skunk.
You can dispatch it.
neutralize this.
That's
It's very
something
large
that we need
mice.
to do some research on.
Yeah.
badger, I
We'll
would
look at
say
it.
badger.
Anything else on the trails and the space that you all would like to see? This would include paved, primitive, and then our business.
So Wendy, is that something you wanna put together a group with Brian?
Yes, please.
Gross, because I bet you if they see fires, they might take like a charcoal grill or something like that, or propane grill. So no open flame specifically.
We'll look at that too. Arches Park, this is a new park that's coming on this year that will have general rules for slackline and hammock area. Basically, it's bring your own, take your own, don't leave stuff hanging up, you can't stay overnight, don't do funny tricks, those kinds of things. So this is more of a proactive approach as we look at some of the issues that some other slackline and hammock areas have seen and get those posted right away. So we don't have to come back to you again. So,
And the code had specifically mentioned flips, right?
yes.
Okay.
Questions for city council, here we go, drone use. This question was brought up to me. By our parks manager, Anthony, and to see how we feel about drone use in parks. And this may be a bigger question for John about drone use in public spaces.
Don't know.
Okay, there's another good question
Invasion of
for us.
privacy. On cameras.
Yeah, see if you can shoot them.
Legislation about that, I believe.
Oh, that
They should be flying at night or after civil twilight. For the most part, they have to be licensed if it's bigger than a certain weight, I think.
I think they all have to be licensed.
The small ones don't. You have to have a larger one, or law enforcement, city. I think your biggest problem in a city park is if you have a failure of an engine or something, and what kind of hazard that presents.
That's part of the codes anyways on flying a drone, you're not supposed to fly it over.
Yeah.
So.
But I'm correct, the small ones now,
You
It
see
is over a
people
certain
flying
weight.
over
Yeah,
this
it's a
playground
certain
out
weight.
back here
Yeah.
every day.
I bet.
so, and Marcus has been out at night, especially in Herriman, there is a significant amount of drones that fly all night long. And he was actually followed down through a certain area by a drone, he got out of his truck and it flew over. So, you know, it's not uncommon to see 5 or 6 of them out there flying around, in the middle of the night.
It's so creepy.
So,
Was a little extreme.
Sounds like something the state legislature should look at.
Okay, we'll look at
They're all
the
in
drones in public places. Strengthen the smoking rule, I think right now it just refers back to the Utah Clean Air Act. I don't see anything in there about the use of vaping or e-cigarettes. So I'd like to look at,
I already added it to your fix.
okay, so we'll look at
Yes.
strengthening that. Butterfield baseball, we've had requests from our baseball players and our leagues to prohibit soft toss, which we wanna do, that's when they hit against the fence, ruins our fences, we've seen a lot of damage there for that.
Yeah, they stretch them out really bad.
Removed shelled nuts and seeds, and then to prohibit dogs on the field unless it's our canine officers that are training.
Should it just be animals, not specifically dogs?
There is a big section in another city's ordinance about horses, domesticated animals, including cats on leashes. I don't wanna go that far.
I just say
Shell
I've
nuts and
never
seeds.
seen.
so
Yes.
like
So you can't.
sunflower seeds, so they're not.
Sunflower
seeds.
seeds, peanuts,
Well, it
pistachios,
says prohibit shelled nuts.
Unshelled.
prohibit unshelled nuts and
That's a
seeds,
good call.
right?
Are we sprouting? Or what's the problem?
All
They
right.
leave big piles and messes and just leave it, they don't.
Well, I get it, it just
He's
says
just
that we're
pointing out my
prohibiting-
error.
Shelled it, that's
So
the
if I brought unshelled peanuts, I'd be just fine.
Yeah.
Until I shelled them, I guess.
Okay, I will fix that. Locked gates and parks, we kinda talked about that, and we'll go back and look at that some more, as well as trail times. And then we neglected to include Crane Park with the ice ribbon, and whether we need to add some specifics to that, we can look at that. Whether we wanna allow people to skate when it's not maintained, my recommendation is no. We like our hours that we have set.
I was wondering that the other day, because like, what prohibits somebody from getting on the ice rink?
They do.
There's a sign,
There's a
that's
sign,
it.
and then they do it anyways.
We go and shoo them away and they come back. They come
It's just
back.
a safety concern with unmaintained ice if it's
Yeah,
not,
some hockey kids don't show up and
Just
spend all
practice.
hours of the night.
yeah, they'll come in the middle of the night. So,
I
we'll
don't
bring it
know of
back
any
again
issues
for
with
you
that there.
in a more formalized version. Okay, that's it for me.
Jeff, thanks.
Thank you.
Alright, we'll move on to item 3.9, Houston Road updates.
So,
3.8,
what about
3.8.
3.8?
Sorry, 3.8. I circled that one to do it next, and then I crossed it off. 2018 Police Department review.
So much funner than talking about parks. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. I brought 2 people that you're gonna miss at the war.
Can we speed this?
No, I'm gonna take a lot of time on this one, because this is important, fun. Want me to sit back here with y'all?
Please.
Okay, so, 116 days as HPD, 35 officers in Herriman City, fully staffed, no open allocations, no retirements, no separations, no nothing. 116 days, that's,
And one
and I'll mention, that's
And one promotion.
115.5 days longer than it was fully staffed by UPDF. Literally, we had a half a day in our entire history where,
That's all.
Jerry, you know that because we sat in the meeting with you.
And fought.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, so that is
So
awesome.
we're not gonna get more officers by starting on police department.
Right, no, not at all.
How we would never be fully out.
No way we'll ever catch up to anybody else. So we are very proud of that. Calls for services received. This was an interesting component that Brett and I, when we went and talked to VEC, which is the Valley Emergency Communication Center, and John H. Morgan told us you're going to receive a 20 to 25% increase in calls. Interestingly enough, you'll see in the 3 months of quarter 4, October, 3679. That puts us on target for about 14,700 calls in 1 year, and that doesn't take into consideration that these were our slower months. Summer months, we're going to go up
The
in calls.
reason the increase, they told us, is because when it's your police force, it's their police force, and they will call.
And they're likely to call.
But it's
Now-
almost like our officers
show
are
up,
yeah.
community oriented and really get out and actively look to avoid this.
Now, and some of this is
We learned from
right. So when we look at that number with Unified Police, they say that about between 6,000 and 8,000 a year, it vacillated back and forth depending on the year. So we're experiencing we're slated to experience about a 50% increase in calls. Now,
We know the number that they gave us isn't exactly.
we don't know. And to be honest with you, they changed it because every call that came into dispatch went through what they called the pooled services. And that created more revenue for them. So they would adjust those calls as necessary. But we think that we're gonna be on target for nearly 15,000 calls in 1 year, which is a lot. Those are calls received. Now, in those go ahead, Brett, I'm sorry.
I said it just blows my mind.
It's crazy. It's amazing to think that we've processed those many calls coming into dispatch. And my hat's off to the dispatchers at VEC. They do an amazing job. What a great organization to be a part of. Police cases worked. Now in 3 months, we worked beyond the go take a call and talk to somebody, where there was actually an effort beyond that, 1,068 calls to detectives.
It's like 10,
By the way,
15
kind of
That's a
back
lot.
up, we did make sure we budgeted as much as 40% increase in calls with that, so we
Yeah.
even covered our dispatching.
What would
So
that
we-
normally be?
What was that?
What would that normally have?
It could be a burglary, it could be domestic violence.
I mean, like,
Previously, what was that?
Compared.
Compared.
Oh, on cases worked?
Mhm.
I think we were probably, I'm trying to remember, I think it was 700 typically in a quarter, I think. So we're getting more cases from our officers to have some sort of investigative effort on the back end, really. And you may see that obviously there's a large disparity between what came into dispatch and what was followed up on. Some of those cases are officers just going out on a civil problem and they finish it right there, it's done, right? So those calls are clearly the majority by about 2/3. But that's good. That means our guys on the street are finishing calls, they're solving the problem, and they're done with it. And that helps our detectives on the back end. We did know that our span of control in detectives was low. As you saw tonight, we've got a sergeant in there to start to manage that. But we are seeing a lot of cases going to detectives. We're also seeing a lot of cases going into our school resource officers, which is what we want. We want those guys in the school solving the problems with our youth. So we're excited with these numbers. Those numbers were very, very good as they came back for us. Any questions on that before I move on? So we look at our pie charts. This is the person's crimes. This is similar to what I would show you when we had UPD here. What's interesting though is we are a property crime city, which is good. We're not a violent crime city. You don't see any homicides up there. South Salt Lake last year had 8 and they have 30,000 people. But what you're seeing here is family offenses. And family offenses are domestic violence and child abuse and some of those other things that you might expect that are part of the family unit. And in a property crime city with your typically high on residentials, you're going to see those types of offenses far exceed your any greater violent offenses. So you've got some assaults up there and trespassing and those kind of things. Sex offenses was surprisingly higher. but it isn't that unusual. We have a lot of kids in here, and a lot of our sex offenses come from that group in the school resource area. Now, heat maps for persons crimes, not surprising to us either. Where's the thing that makes
It's the line.
line thing? Okay. So you'll see right in here, interestingly so, over here on 118 is our school and our apartment complexes over there. Town center and our apartment complex, and then a few out here in that,
That's a lot
by
of
Monarchs.
a lot of construction going on.
By the other apartment complex. So, that's basically what our heat map shows.
Density has nothing to do with it.
In your more traditional neighborhoods in this area, we're seeing that it's pretty cool. We like that. We like blues. We like the onesies and twosies out there. That's a good thing. All right, property crimes. Remember I told you we're a heavy property crime city. We have damaged property, kids out bashing down fences. You're gonna have your thefts and your burglaries and vehicle thefts. Those are big deals.
Of the vehicle thefts, how many were recovered?
You know what, I don't know. I do know that today, the fatality in South Jordan was a vehicle theft out of our city. And it just happened, so that's one of the vehicle thefts typically this time of year are warm-ups. People leave their cars running, and they think it can't happen in 30 seconds. It can happen in 10 seconds. We've had them walking into the Maverick with the car running, and they're still maybe 10 feet from it, and the car drives away. They have no recognition that that car can go missing that quickly. What we expect to see in the next quarter, quarter one of 2019, is this fraud and forgery to go up, and when you see that, don't be surprised. Usually that's the IRS frauds that are happening. People are using other people's social security numbers, and they're taking, and those come into us at a high volume out here especially.
They can pay my tax. No, there's a refund there.
Yeah, they're just trying to get the refunds, and interestingly enough, I don't know how the IRS is gonna handle refunds this year. We'll see. Too soon, probably. We won't talk about that. Property crimes, again, not very surprising what we're seeing. The heat is a lot larger because there's a lot more volume of property crimes in our city. 118 over by the apartment complexes is in the high school. This is interesting. This little piece right here, we're gonna take a peek at that and see what's happening. But typically, again, to Councilman Henderson's point specifically, is that we're seeing that in these areas right here. Any surprises there? Kind of what we've seen in the past. All right, traffic, everybody's favorite, right? We didn't see a lot of change from UPD to HPD, although our crashes, and I don't know, maybe it's a little bit heavier winter this year, our crashes look to be a little bit up from what I had experienced in the past. And they clearly are the big piece of the pie when we talk about traffic. DUIs, this same period last year, I think we had six or seven.
Way up.
Our DUIs are way up. We have a very active DUI unit. They are right now receiving granting from the Highway Safety Council, and they grant us at a high rate because we arrest a lot of DUIs. And it isn't unusual also, if we have that person on a grant and one of our sister cities has a DUI they pull over, we'll actually go handle it for them and take that, because the grant is a statewide grant. So, for instance, South Jordan had a DUI, we ran down and handled it for them because we want those stats to report to the Highway Safety Council.
So what you're saying is that the higher volume of DUI is more so because of better enforcement?
Better enforcement,
Not
absolutely.
because there happens to be more, we just hope maybe a missing
It
link.
was always what it was. The unified model doesn't really engage officers who have to do DUIs where we do. That's one of the expectations that we have. And so, no, to your point, we're not seeing some dramatic increase that we don't understand about DUIs. We expect that they were always there at this level. We did arrest 2 in one night. We arrested a young lady and we're processing the DUI. The officer called the mother to come pick her up and she showed up intoxicated. So she was arrested in the parking lot. So you can't make it up. It happens.
That's awesome.
So, and DUIs are very, very time intensive. They're a Class B misdemeanor typically unless there's an injury or a person under 16. Is that right, John? Under 16 in the car? Then it's a Class A, right? Okay, good.
Yeah, make those super criminals.
Yeah, and so we're seeing a very time intensive, very laborious crime, but we're addressing it head on. And so we're seeing a 2/3 increase in our DUIs out here. We're pretty proud of that. Citations, down at the bottom. 612 in the last quarter. So those citations can range anything from a moving citation, speeding, all the way down to parking citations for our plows, when we're out helping our city brothers and sisters that are driving our plows and getting those cars out of the way. You'll see those citations come in. Now, one thing to note on this, it isn't just us out hammering down on speeders, so that's important. We are focusing on red lights, and we do have a grant right now for pedestrian safety. So what we'll do is we'll take an undercover officer, set him out to the road. Brian's and Cody's team will go out and work those. And if you walk across the street in front of a car, they get a ticket.
Who gets the
The
ticket?
driver. So we send the officer out in a crosswalk.
In a crosswalk, okay,
Yep.
not like just randomly.
No,
on the
and we
street
don't
right
set
in
them
front
up
of
so
a
that
car.
they're jumping off the curb or anything unexpected. We do a long walk on, so there's no issue with prosecution on it. The guys have been very successful with it. We did a lot over at 134 and 56, which is a red light intersection. I can't understand the physics of that yet. We've looked at it. It's a strange intersection, but I'm sure everybody here has experienced a red light runner in that intersection.
Yep.
And we have a lot of crashes in there. We'll see in the heat map. Also, one of our other intersections over at 56 and is it the Parkway now? Right? Boulevard now. Flip-flop. That intersection, I don't know if it's because of the walls. Brett and I went and looked at it. There's some psychology to that intersection. People run red lights there. I get complaints about it. We go over there.
Jared, you're probably seeing them on that too.
Yeah, it's
Sorry, which one?
at 56.
Boulevard 56.
And the
Oh,
park.
Yeah, just an interesting intersection. So those are our two high red light runners, not excluding all of Mountain View, of course. We'll talk
That one's
about that.
interesting 'cause there's
We'll
three.
talk about Mountain View here in a minute.
This doesn't hold citations for Mountain View.
No, it does,
Oh,
it does, but I'm just saying, from our experience, our red
SR
lights are those two.
Two.
They
Yeah,
stop
SR
and they go, or
18,
they
right?
just don't.
148 crashes
Uh-huh.
in 3 months, so 50 a month.
It's an incredible amount, and Kim Martin, one of our officers
guys
on
are
day
bad
shift,
drivers.
what's that?
Oh, you guys are bad.
How many of those involved are officers?
He jinxed
One.
himself.
And she was, so we did have an officer hit. She was on a traffic accident, one of the 148, with her lights on. She happened to be one of the trucks that we had to buy because we were able to employ more officers. So it was one of our new trucks. It's lit up very nicely. We put a full light bar in the back just for this reason. Thankfully, and I can't say thankfully enough, she had just walked away from the back of the truck when someone who we think probably was disinterested in driving, drove into the back of the truck. It lifted the F-150 off the ground, spun it around, and actually broke the back axle.
Oh my gosh.
The back of it's all twisted up, no skid marks. He said he didn't see the car.
Right where
It's hard to
Emergency
see those big
911.
flashing lights.
Well, it's hard to see when you're looking at a phone.
Yeah, I won't say what he was looking at. I just think he was
People are
disinterested in
looking
driving.
at a phone,
Yeah.
you
That
don't
day.
see red
So,
lights flashing.
Thankfully, she's safe. She had walked about 10 feet away from the truck and it propelled it towards her, scared her to death.
Yeah.
But just very, very thankfully, she had actually walked away from the truck because she was standing in the crush zone. So it would have been terrible. So yes, we have one of the trucks sitting down there. It hasn't come back to us yet. They had to order the whole back of the truck, a new axle and the whole bit. It was damaged pretty heavily.
Surprised it didn't total it.
Brand new, it only had 2,000 miles on it, so the damage value of it was so high that they just couldn't get to it. But yeah, brand new truck. You know, what do you do? All right, so heat values on our traffic. This shouldn't be of any surprise, though I am going to have to get a little bit closer. I apologize to show you something that I found very interesting. That is, to put in some perspective for you, here's your corridor, and we're seeing accidents in between the lights. And we're also seeing it, this is a little interesting piece up here by JCW's, is that the correct name of the new restaurant there? We're seeing a hot spot there of accidents, and I can't quite put my finger on that in that short intersection. I think probably, and Blake, you might be able to help me out on this, it might be the quick transition between those lights, coming north and
Several
south.
calls on those lights about a dedicated turn lane. UDOT studied that intersection. They don't have any reason to change it.
Okay.
They said with their study.
We're,
It's
yeah,
be the
kind of a
geometry.
messy intersection.
it is kind of a messy intersection, and it's offset. It seems
Yeah.
like it's at an
There's a
angle.
lot of construction traffic in that area
Yeah.
right now too that might contribute to that.
And so we'll keep an eye on this for our future quarters, and we'll look at the heat on that. But on 126, east of the Mountain View corridor down by the Maverick, we get a lot of accidents there, and I'm assuming they're rear enders, because they line up on that westbound lane that's in our city, and for some reason we get just a string of accidents there. It's one of the strangest places. No surprise out here, that's Rosecrest and Mountain View, and then we have our heat. up by the high school. Just
And out of curiosity, are we enforcing both sides of the street on 134, or are we partnering with Riverton for that section on 134 that's half Riverton, half?
So we don't necessarily partner with them, and we will enforce laws on their side. The only difference is we send it to their court. That's the only difference. And yeah, if one of our guys is going up the road and their stalker goes off and somebody's going 60 miles an hour, they'll get a ticket. The only difference is we write a Herriman ticket to the Riverton court. So right, and we don't actively go out and patrol their side and do enforcement on their side. And I think things will change. Chief Don Hudson was hired, you may or may not know, to be the chief of police down in Herriman, and he will be a fantastic partner for the city of Herriman. Or, yeah, down in Riverton, not Herriman. I like the job. Just fine. Yeah.
Is you announcing something?
Nope. I love where I work. This is great. So we will partner with them, and more so. We're going to partner with SWAT, and we'll be doing some track enforcement, even down to crossing guards, because some of our crossing guards work for both cities, as we have that area in Riverman that we share. So if it crosses in our city, even though the school may be in Riverton, we pay for the crossing guard, and vice versa. So they would pay. And I know I wasn't making eye contact with you specifically over that, because I know how it angers you.
Go off on this
So,
earlier.
Please don't think that I was. I apologize.
For all the schools in other cities.
Not making eye contact.
All over the board.
We won't talk about schools much more. Yes, we will.
They walk through.
So recently, you all saw this on TV. The active shooter call came out in Murray. Sergeant Casey Davies was on duty in the city of Herriman, and amazingly so, he responded as he should have to an active shooter call to aid our brothers and sisters in Murray and law enforcement, and that is the picture that was on the front page of KSL. Gotta love it. We sent K-9, SWAT, and some patrol resources down there. Immediately we activated our backups here and brought them into the city to back it up. So one of the things that we know very clearly is if you have a mass event in one place, you prepare for a mass event in another. And so we brought out 7 officers into Herriman. Just because you never know, it happened in Vegas, it's happened across the country. So we will always, when we have a mass event in Salt Lake County, we will backfill it into our city. The other reason for that is we have an agreement with every other agency in Salt Lake County to, not to give too much of our tactics away, but to prevent people from leaving Salt Lake County. So we will mobilize forces in our city to prevent that, because we have a couple of roads that we have to cover. So if we get the call to do that, we have to have people in the city, and remember, we can never stop to provide services that naturally come in, of those 3,000 calls a quarter that came in. So one of the cool things I love more than anything is when we get these emails that come in, and sometimes letters that come in about what a great job we're doing. My wife and I were at the about time. This is somebody else writing. I didn't go to the about time. And there was an issue in there, and the police got there, and the response was both speedy and commensurate with the situation. Some people had just moved here, and they're happy with how they're being treated. We have others that were grateful. She's a runner, never had really seen much patrolling in areas or the dark spots, and now she's seeing that quite often. We're getting videos coming in of our police trucks driving through neighborhoods from Ring doorbells and stuff when crimes have been committed. So our presence is up. And that's one of the things that it certainly is my expectation. Be seen, be visible, and it just sends the right message that we're doing what we're being paid to do. So, moving on. This is my opportunity to introduce Detective Jose Lopez. You heard from him a little bit last time about this really cool thing called the Youth Academy, and I'd love to turn the time over to you, sir.
All right.
And you can come right up here and talk to him. I'll hold the clicker.
I like to sit down, so I like to sit down.
Don't trust it. I have control issues, okay?
All
I'll
right.
hold the clicker.
All right. So, where do we start? Let's see. So the Youth Academy, obviously the purpose of the Youth Academy is to increase communication between the youth in our community with police, so that they can then move on and share that knowledge that they get from this academy with their peers in school, family, or whomever in the community. So we've, as of right now, we have 35 that are registered and committed to attending this academy.
And they're all from Herriman?
They are all from Herriman. Actually, two of them are from South Jordan. However, they go to Herriman High School, so they're from Herriman. This will start next week on the 29th. It'll go a total of 8 weeks. the first week, what we'll do is, we'll have an introduction to our operations. So our policies and procedures and kind of the things, the structure of our Herriman Police Department, we'll go over that with them. We'll also share, or we'll get some expectations out to the, I don't wanna call them cadets, because they're not cadets yet, so to the students. And then we'll have chief and other members talk, about the Herriman Police Department. They'll all be getting a uniform, they'll be getting a shirt that will have, the Youth Academy logo with, HPD on the chest, so that they, this was an idea that the chief had.
It doesn't happen everywhere.
It doesn't happen everywhere, and we didn't have a uniform before when we did this in another city, and I think this is a great idea because we'll all look like a team, and we'll be representing Herriman when we go to these different locations, so.
And if there's kids from South Jordan, you know who I'm gonna take a picture of instead of my brother. You know that's gotta happen, so.
So the second week, what we'll do is we'll be transporting these students to the dispatch center, the VEC. They'll get a tour of the VEC facility, and they'll also be able to walk and listen to actual live calls that are taking place. They'll also be debriefed on a call. We say hot calls, or an incident that took place, a case that's probably now been adjudicated, and it's good to debrief. They'll be actually able to go through that. On the last one that we had just to give you guys an idea of what they do is, dispatch will bring all the students in a room like this, and they'll go over the actual calls of, we had a hostage situation in Mill Creek where our SWAT team was called out, and it was a pretty, it was a bad deal where a lady was shot, I think 16 times, and they actually get to hear these live calls of when the calls are coming in, when the officers are doing their rescues, when SWAT arrives, and what they do, and until they take this person into custody. They'll be able to listen to all that. And I say this because some of these students are gonna be 14 through 18, and some of this may be too much for some.
It was
but,
difficult for me to listen.
It was, and that's one thing that we'll tell the students before that. They're not obligated, obviously, to be in there, and we'll go through all that before. And they may not be debriefing the same one, but it's something that they are going to be told about before they even enter into that
Minors, just
situation.
their parental consent.
We'll have all that. Yeah.
We get all that sound, and you're right. That's a hard one to listen to.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that shouldn't be shown. I'm just saying, like, the experience is just intense.
Yeah, I was on that one as well too, on the real life call. So it was pretty intense, and to listen to it after me being there, I don't really get emotional, but I got a little emotional that day. So.
We don't give our dispatchers enough credit for what they do. That is physically draining just to listen to it after it's done, let alone managing all those resources. The dispatcher that was on duty at the Murray active shooter, that turned out to be a gang shooting, she was amazing. As soon as I got the call, I flipped on the radio, and she was just one after another. You had cars coming from every city in 3 counties, and she handled it unbelievably well. I would have not been able to do it. So, yeah, it's amazing to watch go through the dispatch.
On week 3, we'll be going over some of our specialties that we have. For example, the school resource officers, forensic detective will talk about what he does. Our detectives will talk to the students about what it is that we do, and we'll also have a chance to get our victims advocate to talk to them about what their functions are when they go on different calls or scenes. Week 4 will be a tour of the firearms. We'll be going to the range and to a VERTRA. Some of you guys that have gone through the academy, through the adult academy, you're familiar with VERTRA. VERTRA is like to put it in a better way, it's kind of a big video game that you're equipped with weapons, and you're put into a scenario that you have to act. And it's basically for them just to kind of see what it is that we're dealing with when we go on certain situations. And from my experience, from them doing that, they come out and we have a good discussion of, wow, I shot that guy and he didn't have anything on him, or he shot me and I didn't even realize it. And it's a good discussion to have with them. So that'll be that week. And then the following week, week 5, we'll have an introduction to we'll do an intro to corrections, which is a jail tour. We'll take them to the Salt Lake County Jail, and we'll have them walk through and kind of just see how inmates interact. They obviously won't be interacting with any of them, but they'll get to see and and they'll talk to, some of the correction officers there and they'll get their take on what their functions are there, so. Week 6, special operations, they'll get to meet our K-9, officers, their dogs. They'll get to meet our SWAT guys, which that's probably gonna be their highlight. These guys laugh, sorry. And then motors, they'll get to meet motors, and then, search and rescue as well.
Can't tell that Jose's on the SWAT team.
So they'll get to interact with all of us on that day, and we'll have some demonstrations, and we'll probably let off a couple of, loud bangs so that,
So
you
you
know,
will flash me.
so you guys will know, Herriman we may be getting some calls that day. So that call list is gonna go up, chief, so you know.
Or we'll show them a video of what one looks like.
It's an experience. You've never had to have
It is an
this experience.
Week 7, will be, we put it down as applying skills, it's scenarios. We're gonna go over everything that they've learned, and we're gonna put them in real life scenarios, where they have to interact and work together with peers that they have been working with for the last 6 weeks. They're gonna be kind of forced to not to get to know each other where they're friends, but to get to learn, about other people in their community, so that, you know, you guys know first impressions from someone, and you can say, well, I don't know if I can, you know, talk to somebody or whatnot. By this day, they'll be able to work together, go into situations together, and be able to communicate. And then after, if they don't, we'll have a discussion on how we can better work together, so.
These scenarios can be emotionally draining and intense, and they'll experience some different emotions out of it.
So from that, we're not gonna make it as intense as the adult ones.
Yeah, it
They're
won't
gonna
be
be,
that level.
they're gonna be way down because, we're gonna just, and unless you want them that.
No.
You wanna
We'll save that for
encourage
the
them
adult.
to keep.
Yeah, it's team building.
Yeah, team building.
Yeah, that'll be team building.
I just remember when I was in a scenario and you
Oh, I
came
knew
in,
you-
man, I'm not sorry I had to throw you out there, you did good, but yeah. it's
They're
scary.
tough to work with.
Scary.
They're always tough.
As long as you don't tell any stuff.
Tell you
Were
guys
you hiding in a shred bin?
No.
The
Our-
old shred bin trick.
Our week 8 is in my opinion, in my experience doing these academies, is the most important week. We get to not only interact with the cadets, but with their family, with their mom and dad, which they will be invited to come to that ceremony that we'll have for them, and they'll get to see, in some cases, their child. I say child because they're still 14 and they're kids. What their growth has been throughout that. The confidence that they build from this program, believe it or not, is huge. And that's why I like to do it, because I like to see these kids, some of them come in, and by the time they leave, their confidence level is way high, and they feel like they can sometimes do anything. I know it's corny, but that's just how I feel. So every week we're gonna feed these students. So we're gonna be going out and talking to some businesses in Herriman, to letting them know what we have, what we're doing, and hopefully they help us out a little bit. If not, then
Brett's gonna buy it.
Brett's been so awesome. No, we
I lived there first.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so thank you guys. No, we'll have them fed, and as we go through all of our presentations and courses that we'll have. So moving on out, this program, again from my experience, is a door opener to the cadet program that we will have. The cadet program, some of you guys are familiar with. It's kids in our community that are willing to come out and help in their community when we have events and whatnot. At the same time, they have a little bit of interest in law enforcement, which is gonna build them up to where they can potentially go to the police academy and then become police officers in our city, in Herriman. So I talked to the chief about this, and I said, you know, this is super important, because if I don't live in Herriman, but if I would love to work for the city that I grew up in, or that I still have something in, so I think it's a little bit a sense of ownership. So it's a good pathway to get there with the cadet program.
We think that kids in our community are the best candidates to police our community. There's no sense in looking at others, and if we can help, cultivate that and bring those kids up through, why wouldn't we, right? Those are the kids we want here.
And then the Cubs program, that's something that Marcus is gonna be heading up, a little bit more of. I can tell him about it, or if you wanna tell him, Marcus, up to you.
Just, yeah.
So our Cubs program, what we do is we go around to our local businesses who serve alcohol, whether it be the gas stations or some of the grocery stores or restaurants, and we basically advise them. We provide them with the alcohol laws, so that they're familiar with it, so they basically get a heads up that you can't sell alcohol to juveniles. We give them a couple weeks. We even meet with the manager to have them train their staff. And then after a couple weeks, we take underage kids, usually from Providence Hall or high school, or Herriman High School, and we dress down in plain clothes and we take them to a gas station or one of our local businesses, and the juvenile will walk in, grab an alcoholic beverage, and take it to the counter and try and pay for it. Now the thing is, we don't ever try and trick them. We don't tell them to lie about their age. If they say, "How old are you?" and they're 16, we tell them to say, "I am 16." And then they provide their identification, and hopefully they get denied. If they don't, then they come out with the alcoholic beverage. We go back in with the alcoholic beverage and explain to them what they did, and they receive a citation. Either way, what we do, typically they don't sell. Our community is really good at not doing that. We have a really high success rate with that. And then we actually send them a letter basically saying, we sent some undercover children and officers into your store. This employee did a great job, followed all the laws and procedures. Great job. Thank you for being a good part of our community. So we're going to do that. We're going to try and do it quarterly, just to keep on top of it. But yeah, it's a great program.
So our enforcement measures aren't always bad, right? We want to go in there and reinforce great behaviors and tell them this is what we expect, and we're glad that you followed along with that. So, and you'll hear from me, program continuity, right? We don't want to be a traditional law enforcement that is trying to be progressive. We want to be the Apple and Google of law enforcement. We want to attract good employees to come here and work. We want to make sure they're happy, and we want to see one thing lead to another. We just don't want to do the youth academy and go, great, well, that was fun. Just for the fact of doing it, we're trying to get them somewhere. Does that make sense? We're trying to help them through. And that really ties into the next piece with Lieutenant Weimer, who, this is the DARE piece I teased you with last time. This is an amazing program he's about to explain. And some of the things that it'll lead to. I mean, these things are endless as we go forward. So, go ahead, Brian.
Stand back here where I can see everybody, but I don't know if I'll be able to read that. Should have brought my glasses with me.
Well, I just needed them for a little print up close. That's a big.
I can read that. Okay, we're good. I want to say I love my job. I feel so fortunate to be part of Herriman PD and to be part of Herriman. It's a great place to work. It's been a fantastic journey so far. I feel very fortunate. And I realize that it is a great place to work because of the people in this room. And I thank you for that. There are a number of responsibilities that I have, but one of them is the school resource officers, and we have 5 in our city. In the middle schools, we have a full-time DARE officer, Jake Cutright, who works in the elementary schools, and we're hoping to add more DARE officers because the demand is growing as our city's growing. We're adding more schools. What's really cool, if you haven't been to a DARE graduation, you should go. It's fascinating to me to walk into this auditorium during the day, a weekday, and it's packed. There's standing room only, and time after time after time. And it's because the culture of this community, and there's so much support for DARE, and the parents come out. I think we'd be hard-pressed to get the parents to come out for other events during the day, to leave their work, to leave all their other responsibilities. It's just amazing to me. And a big reason why they come out is because of Jake Cutright. And I think he personifies the adage that, yeah, he's,
What's that?
which one is he?
The bottom. Yeah, Jake's on the bottom right.
Jake really believes in the program, and people buy what you believe, and he invests all of his energy into those kids and teaching. And it's fascinating to go to lunch with Jake, and you'll see 18, 19-year-old kids will go, oh, I know you, you're Officer Jake, you're my brother's DARE teacher. And other kids that are 14, 15 will come in and go, Officer Jake, remember when you taught me? And people remember him. I think it has a huge impact. It's not that way in every community across the country, but in Herriman, it's really embraced. I think we have a unique opportunity to really impact the kids here. And then there's Thunder, and that's who we're seeing in the picture. And that's probably a future mascot.
Yeah, we're trying to work this into a mascot, interestingly enough, and we'll talk more about that here in a minute, but it took off.
Huge hit with the kids. They love the dog. Obviously, it's a cute dog. He's an interesting personality. Big hit.
He can walk about 100 feet at a time.
Yeah, and then he's got to sit down and catch his breath. It's a very unique opportunity. We feel like both Jake and the dog.
If Jake was here for this, it'd be so much better.
It's a unique opportunity, DARE, that is, for us to really impact lives. Of all the things that we do, and as cops, we get to do some cool stuff. I mean, the chief used to fly on a helicopter as part of his assignment, just run a canine dog. We've got Jose on the SWAT team and lots of unique opportunities. But really, this opportunity to teach DARE and to be in the schools as a school resource officer is a unique chance to really touch lives and change the kids and kind of build a bridge between the kids and the police, where they feel like we're more approachable, they can talk to us. It's a great thing. Should we advance that? So, I mentioned we have, in Herriman, we have those 5 detectives that work in the schools, 1 full-time DARE officer. So that full-time officer, typically in most cities, a DARE officer will teach 5 elementary schools, and that keeps them very, very busy. The number of classes they teach. Jake said last year he taught really close to 400 lessons, so it's really a very taxing thing.
And we're graduating over 1,000 kids a year,
which is
it's an amazing amount of kids. Yeah. We're having classes of 5 and 6.
Yeah.
In one setting.
So
graduate.
5 is a good number for a DARE officer in terms of the number of elementary schools that they would teach in. Jake right now is at 7, and it's really 8 because Providence Hall has twice as many 5th grade classes as the other schools. Athlos wants to have a DARE officer. We've come to an agreement. We just need to work out the details. So we're
we need to work out the hours. We got to find more hours for him to teach.
Yeah. So, and then we have the new elementary school and other possibilities. RSL Academy wants to. They're going to be bringing in elementary age kids. So there's more growth there. There's more need there. Also, to add to Jake's load, this year they added a over-the-counter and a prescription drug opioid portion to their curriculum. That's going to not just the 5th graders, but this goes to the 6th graders. Next year there's a vaping component that's coming in for the 7th graders. So there's more demand there. And I think the over-the-counter, the opioids, and vaping are very relevant to our community, what we're seeing in the schools. So those are important classes.
And just so you know, we drove some of that component because we were the ones that questioned, this is just in 5th grade and it's some dated material. How do we make it special to us and to our community and meet our needs? And that's kind of what will lead to his next item he talks about, and we've been given this amazing opportunity. But how do we make it ours that fits our culture, our community, so that we're not teaching something that is from back east or out west or someplace other than where it is? And so this over-the-counter and prescription safety really, and vaping, you have a terrible issue with vaping right now. But again, and Brian has studied, this greatly. How do we make it age appropriate? How do we make it matter? We basically have taken these 5th graders and we go, that's your job. And that's the last I see of us? That can't be.
Right.
And my intent to be in the schools is greater than anything. We are going to have cops in schools, or we're going to have that matter. We're going to have that mean something.
So we know last year was a tragic, tough year in our schools with some of our current and also former students, the suicides that we had, and just huge impact on the schools in our community. And a lot of conversation came out of that, and it's not, it's clearly not a Herriman problem. It's a nationwide problem. but it did impact our community. And so we sat down together, our group of SROs, and we talked about, what can we do, what are we seeing? We talked about the specific problems and challenges and some of the behaviors that we're seeing in the schools that are contributing to what we're seeing is a sense of hopelessness with a lot of the youth. They don't feel connected, they don't know how to interact, and we began to list things, some of the causes and some of the areas we wanted to impact. And so the mental wellness, we wanted to impact cyberbullying, texting, sexting, which is real prevalent in the middle schools and the high schools. And then the use of social media, responsible use, and helping the kids to understand how social media interferes with their ability to really interact well. Screen time and gaming in and of itself keeps kids up, I know in my own home, keeps kids up longer than they should be up, and that affects the rest of their life. So they're habits that they're getting into that are self-defeating. And then we see the self-medicating issues. All of those suicides, anecdotally, are tied to marijuana use. They're either, I think you can say with confidence, they're all related to marijuana use. I know that there are experts who would debate that, but we're strong marijuana smokers. So I think that's something we need to look at. And then vaping really is that same thing. It's a self-medicating. They're using CBD oil and other marijuana-related products.
You guys know what that is, the
vape.
CBDs? So they're doing that in school, in class.
Yeah.
They blow it into their coat, and they have ways to use that vaping device in class.
You'd be shocked at how many $200, $300, $400 vaping devices we take from the schools on a regular basis for the students. It's a problem. So I've had, over the last 7 years, I've had an opportunity to work with a company, a consulting company. And they're researchers that work in positive psychology. And they primarily work with these recreational therapy groups where children are court-ordered into the wilderness to learn coping skills. And so my job, because I rock climb and canyoneer and mountaineer, and I've had experience in technical training with the search and rescue in Salt Lake County, I work as a technical person. So I work the ropes and stuff while these PhDs are teaching this curriculum. So I've been exposed to it over the years, and they're talking about positive psychology principles, wellness principles. They talk, there's a module on grit, some of you are probably familiar with. Angela Duckworth's piece on resilience, study research that she's done. So there's a lot of this curriculum that I know really would help and apply to our students. But the difficulty is DARE will not you can't go as a DARE teacher and teach outside of their curriculum. So what vehicle could we use to impact this? The things that we're seeing in our community that are listed up there. And so we started as an SRO group to outline curriculum and to think about how we could have it validated, research-based, get a sponsor from a graduate student from the U or somewhere to come help us build this curriculum that we would be able to teach in the schools, knowing that DARE wasn't going to allow us to talk about just anything. Then Jake Cutright and Michael Larson went to a DARE training, and they mentioned to the state DARE powers that be that we were looking at this. And so they set up a meeting and a conference call. So we went to this meeting, we talked to a researcher from back east who's building more forward-thinking DARE curriculum. And so we shared our ideas, what we were seeing in our community with this researcher who's doing these lesson plans on wellness, coping skills, resiliency, and our ideas and the researcher's ideas, her ideas really meshed well, and they asked us to pilot this new DARE program. One of the things that we wanted to accomplish was, as the chief mentioned, to have some continuity, elementary school, middle school, and then into high school. Maybe not the same number of teaching days that we do in elementary school, but at least to have some teaching days in the middle school and some in the high school where we could bring this curriculum along, hoping to impact our students. And so we agreed to pilot this. They're going to fly out a team on February 25th for a couple of days, and we'll be teaching the first of their lessons in the school. So it gave us a chance to take the problems we're seeing, the issues, the challenges we're seeing in our schools, in Herriman, and to address them specifically, to have them research-based, part of DARE's curriculum, so it's validated, it's legitimate, and it's already a program that's embraced in Herriman, so it's really a win-win for us. We're really excited about it. We have 2 other officers that we're going to be sending to DARE school in July, so that'll bring our numbers up to 3, and they'll each be doing, Jake will still be full-time, the other officers will be doing what they can with as their time allows to teach in the schools. But we're excited about that. We really feel like it gives us a chance to impact our community and the kids, and to really address what we're seeing, the issues we're seeing in school.
And we think this is next level stuff. This isn't progressive law enforcement. This is next level stuff. This is what I've talked to you about time and time again, where it has to matter, it has to mean something. What we're doing just can't be us spinning wheels and coming here for 8 hours a day. Great. We did something.
Put out what fires you can't.
Right.
even go on.
No, and we don't ever want to be that police department or that community that's putting out fires. We don't want them to start, right? So we need to get in there, we need it to matter, we need to make a change, we need to make a difference. And, go ahead.
It's just progressive, I just love, because they're great, but it's like, they're 5th grade, and don't get me wrong, it's critical there too, but then once they hit the next social
There's a
aspect of
disconnect.
junior high, it's like,
Right.
it all went away, you know, and then high school, it's like, to have that.
And DARE's not so cool when you're in junior high, and it's
Yeah,
definitely not
exactly.
cool when you're in high school.
Yeah.
But if we teach them that there's continuity in our program, and those officers, and then again, we have officers in the schools, we want to hand them off. We're going to have a brand new, huge high school opening. We're going to have an officer in there, and we need to have this. So our SRO program is a massive program, believe it or not. We don't have officers who just go to the school and put out fires or check in with the principal and hide in their office. That does not happen here. Our officers, from our mandates, will go there. They will teach, they will be productive, they'll be connected, they'll be interconnected with each other. And Brian has these meetings with basically an entire unit of people that in other cities are disconnected. Our guys are not only connected, they're coming up with a plan to how we walk these kids through life and help them get out of school. Your law enforcement team is in there working hard. And we know that our SRO unit is gonna grow. Schools are coming, you know, so we know that's gonna grow, and we wanna be a part of it, we wanna be ahead of it. And we want to be that agency that others come and study. And they're going to come here for that. And yeah, we were hit with that suicide issue. It was awful. It's tragic.
Let's start in the school district.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Oh, this is awesome.
that's where we're at. So just know,
Super awesome.
when I told you the DARE thing that's coming is pretty cool. This is Herriman City in the United States is running this program.
Awesome.
In 3 months, by the way,
Good
we've been alive
Honestly, I just
for
want to
3
say,
months.
I mean, to do what you guys have done in the amount of time, and not just the last 3 months, but the few months prior to that, just to get up and running, let alone take the next step to do all of these other things.
And it's really a tribute to the personnel.
It is,
Great,
absolutely.
great
It's these
folks.
guys, and we as a command team, we're not willing to just start a police department. I told you I wasn't just starting a police department, I'm gonna start the police department. And in 3 months that we've been alive, this is the thought process that these guys have gone through.
I know I talked really fast. Are there any questions before I?
You'll see it grow.
Excited to see.
It's gonna be amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate everything and your action real. We're gonna take a short break, because Councilman Henderson is locked out of the room.
Yes.
Did you have to turn any kids away? Did you have more than 35?
Yes.
Okay.
We did.
I
I
just did a
should've-
presentation of
I
it,
should've
yes.
said that.
Okay.
You have to be there at least for graduation.
Thank you all for allowing us that short break. We will move on to item 3.9, the Houston Road update.
Okay, this one's gonna be rather quick. We set this up on the agenda with about 5 of our meetings set up with the residents, and then a couple of them canceled. I've likened it to herding cats, setting up meetings with multiple people, because things just change.
Write that down,
Schedules
when you
change.
come to you, we went through this again.
But I got some good things to report, so let's see. So here's the timeline. I just want to keep giving you the timeline so that we remember where we're at. Green is where we're at, black's what's completed, red's what's to happen. So if you look at the bottom, if everything works out, we should be paving in April or May. If everything works out. It's looking pretty
What
promising.
you mean is when everything works.
Optimism's good. It's looking pretty promising with the people we met with. So,
She's new.
remind you, last meeting we decided to go with this modified cross-section, 47-foot wide, because it minimized the impacts to the private properties, and had some other upsides and downsides to it. But for the most part, the people we've talked to, they really like this idea. Those X's are the people that we have talked with, that we're fairly certain we're gonna be able to work a deal out with them.
Then why'd you use an X?
That was all that was available on my options in this at that time. I was gonna put a check mark, but I couldn't find a check mark.
24 feet of asphalt then?
It's got a shoulder too.
Shoulders included in that?
Yeah, 24 plus 2 4-foot shoulders, so.
That looks to be the minority of
That's pretty good asphalt section.
property owners.
But I know that one, pretty positive.
Yeah,
Good to go, that one I'm pretty positive.
The ones we've talked to, the whole north side feels like they're good with it.
Oh.
And the south side, the one person that I was afraid I was gonna have a problem with, he came in and was awesome to work with. Oh, more than awesome to work with. So it's been good so far. The main,
Yes.
the main thing that they brought up was they didn't want their fences impacted, especially the yellow square that I've shown. It's a pretty nice fence they put in to put around the riding arena. So the design makes it so we don't have to touch the fence, and they were very happy, very thankful for that. I don't think they cared about much else of their property except for that fence, to be honest. But the impacts to existing trees, some of them had some existing trees along their property. They said, can we replace them or relocate them? So we were going to use Heidi, who is our landscape architect, who knows a lot about trees, a lot more than I do about trees. And she'll go out and we'll kind of evaluate what we can do with them. And if they work in the budget, we'll be able to do it. And then street lighting. They typically don't want street lighting. So I made a little slide to show where the proposed street lights would go. There's the 4 blue lights would be new lights. The ones along the riding arena, I guess the second one in from the west end, that one, they kind of like that one, actually, because it would light up their arena. Everyone else said, I don't want one in front of my house. So I don't know what to do there.
I hate it too.
So lighting, if we take it out, it does save some budget, but it does make the road a little darker, so it's kind of a trade-off. We could always put the conduit and the boxes in and have it ready to go.
You still want to dig up later,
Right.
come back a year later and
I was
dig
just
up.
gonna say, they have to stub it no matter what.
Yeah, have your bases all in and ready so you can just see where they're gonna go. So it's an option to go there. We'll meet with the rest of the residents, and I haven't shown them this exhibit yet, so when we get closer, we'll do that. So the little exhibit on the bottom show what we hope to have done. Our planned action items here are throughout the rest of this month and beginning next month. Just kind of keep meeting with them, making sure we address their concerns, which so far we've done a pretty good job of. I think the way we set up the meeting with the community meeting first and then one-on-ones was a very good process to take on. And we're going to finalize our engineering design probably 2nd, 3rd week in February. Then we're going to have all the deeds prepared and temporary construction easements. So the deeds get held in escrow.
I'm not gonna get excited at all until that part's done. guarantee it. Somebody.
No, I'm
that-
telling you, just don't curse things.
Deeds will be held in escrow
And then
until
we're-
then.
Deeds will be held in
So we-
escrow
they
until we
complete their
get
opening.
to substantial completion. There'll be a punch list at the end of the project, there always is. There's gonna be this or this
So
or
help
that.
me understand what.
Does that satisfy John?
Let's talk offline.
Okay. The plan is to have the deeds signed and just held.
We'll talk offline.
And then we'll have a temporary construction easement to go on their property and work. And then, construct the roadway and record the deeds. That's the plan, if John agrees with it. If there's some tweaking we have to do.
This is news to me, so I,
Okay. We haven't got the deeds prepared yet because we're still working on the finalizing the design. But that's the update, and the residents have been really good to work with. They've
It's like
all
my
been.
kids saying that they'll actually clean the house. You know, honest.
They're
Gotta
at
have a ribbon.
everyone I was.
Yeah, we'll have a big ribbon cutting.
Yes, big scissors, look it up.
Gina Road is a little bit different story, and just a quick update on that, I sent an email out, I don't know if it went out to everyone. Sent it internally to management here, or to senior management here. Talk about our meeting we had with one of the residents on that road last week, talked about our presentation we gave you at the last council meeting, and we're still doing some homework follow-up on that meeting, so I think we'll have a formal update on that in city council updates in the near future. But Gina Road looks like there's an option to do a maintenance agreement. And then they might be okay with us going out and grading it and making it a little bit safer.
Stop digging a trench.
How would you guys
Trench.
feel about that? Doing a formal maintenance agreement with them, like, it's kind of like a lease, basically.
I think I need to get more information on that.
Yeah,
We're gonna
I'd want to know.
work out some terms in it and then we'll definitely bring that to council to look at. So,
Any further question? You good?
Good job, Blake.
Okay, thanks. Item 3.10, city manager updates.
Hey, one of the meetings that we missed, the last meetings, talked about who's doing that Simon's regional and local committee. It's, happens not on a regular basis, but it's typically the third Wednesday of the month. And our city planner has been going to that, those meetings. But they do have elected officials there. And the next meeting is on February 20th. It jumps to April 17th, July 17th, we'll get to see this is for interest right now, so September 18th, December 18th. They're not on a regular basis, but they're sporadic that way at 2 o'clock, and like I said, they're typically the third Wednesday of each month.
Would it just be beneficial to continue to have the city planner go?
What's that?
So,
Is this
it's,
the one
I was under the
that-
impression that the committee is formed of elected officials. I mean, as you know, Mayor, I've occasionally been there with you.
Is this the Western Grove Coalition thing?
This is not Western, it's regional. Michael, who do you see?
I
It's outside
nominate
this county
Clint
too,
and
isn't it?
Nicole.
Yes, Utah County is also in attendance. Trying to think if anybody from Summit.
there's a few from, Tula.
Are you just asking for somebody to go? It's on a Wednesday at 2.
Third Wednesday of each month, but they're not on a regular, they're only like half.
February, April, July, September, December. I can go if nobody else can. If I know far enough, you know.
I can also.
1, 2.
There you go.
Both you wanna go, or?
She's first on the list.
Yeah, and if
Okay.
I can't, then we'll tag team it.
I'll alternate.
Just send me the things so I remember.
Yep. And then, when you talk about sports fields real quick,
All right, we have a
Again?
we have a new high school, in case y'all didn't know. So, we are
It's Bluffdale's
growing,
high school. Bluffdale.
we try to get there, they didn't want it.
we are growing from 7 leagues to, we're expecting 12, maybe 13 leagues using our parks. So that's growth that the leagues that we didn't anticipate was the big expansion of lacrosse, because now they're not just boys, it's now girls and boys, and now we've got it times 2. So we're gonna be working really closely with our leagues to try to allocate space as equitably as possible. It's gonna be tough, there's gonna be a lot of sharing, there's gonna be a lot of tears shed, I'm sure, but, we're gonna work hard to make it work. Football is our other expansion, it's going from 1 league to 3. And so we've been working with those football league presidents to try to figure out how we're gonna handle that situation. We've put together some estimates, we've kind of looked at charges and what we thought would be fair for them in this first year of paying rates. So I've got those here, we'll pass them out to you if you have any concerns with what we've come together with. We've really just simplified it into a daily rate, and depending on which park and how it's being used, that's how we went about our calculation. So we're happy to go back and revisit and get your input. So it's gonna be fun.
Council members over a year ago always asked to bring it back, we brought it back December
Yes.
conversation, and so this is the numbers she's come up with. I reviewed them, actually, I think it seems, the leagues will think it's outrageous, but I think it's fair.
So underneath the green
Is that
on the
bad
very
at all?
far left are what they would pay, and next to that is our first year introductory rate, is what we're
So
calling
it's
it.
an additional amount for the first year?
No, the rate on the far right, on the bottom, that would be the rate they would pay for their season.
And you base it off of kind of really our costs, the impact you feel like we have.
And I can
help
send
cover
you
it.
our cost
That would be
estimates,
awesome.
I have that as well.
Yeah, that would be
But they're in an annual cost matrix,
Yeah,
so
that'd be great.
I can break those out further if
For,
you like,
for an
sorry.
annual cost, that's not bad.
So-
No, that's what
No,
we said
it's
too.
not.
I mean, I'll tell you, just one of the two teams that I coach to rent the field in Draper to practice, we paid $1,200 for 3 months
Yeah.
for one team.
Yeah, and that's, the seasons usually took them 3 to 4 months
Yeah.
on these areas, so.
But some
it's
of them,
not
they're spring
annual.
and fall, and we've broken it down according to parks,
And this
so.
is for the entire league, not just per team, right?
Right, that's for the entire league, the league would pay that up front. And it really goes back to, we looked at the school district and what they're charging and Riverton and what they're charging, and it's pretty similar. They charge per participant, but it all kind of equals out to be the same, because we didn't wanna gouge our
Sure.
our participants, right? So you guys look that over, let me know if you have any questions or concerns, and I'll email out those maintenance costs.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Back to you, Brett.
Crossing things out without talking about it.
Well, it's great, because Tammy's just taking a lot off my list, that's all really good.
Take it.
The only comment I gotta make left is Tammy took about 3 things off, so that's really good news. We've had a lot of conversation, I say we, Utah City Manager Association has been networking about federal government shutdown. A lot of conversations, a lot of cities are passing.
Can we shut down the state? That would be.
They're passing
February.
or given a leniency to people that are federally employed of put them on a payment plan for their utilities. I've been watching this all for the last few days, and I think Gordon has too, because he gets the same emails I do. And at first I thought I was supportive, but there was some strong arguments on their side too. So if you have another agency, say a big company like Rio Tinto, shut down, are we gonna put them on a payment plan? Where's it? How do you separate government employee versus
Right.
a non-government employee? Everything needs to be treated the same and fair. And I really like that statement. I thought, At first I felt bad, and I do feel bad, but one city manager, won't name his name, but he's a little more candid. He says, if you work for a bad corporation and they need to shut it down, and you have to, are we gonna make those payments up? No. Basically says that it should be shut down. They should be getting a paycheck. But the two government entities are not getting along, from the president to the legislative body, and it is what it is. But my recommendation would we do nothing, because how do we bring up the next person? Because everybody has financial problems, and there's also a lot of programs going around and they're talking about those in the emails too, subsidies of other government agencies and some other funding mechanisms to get them in hold, get through this time period. We feel bad. I do feel bad, but
But not any worse than you feel bad for anybody that loses their job or gets laid off.
right.
No fault of their own. I had
The
a
business closed down, say, I don't know, think about our biggest
Rio
employer.
Tinto closed down because because of the slide.
Yeah, or even, well, that's a government, but, school district. Could happen.
Have we had any requests?
No. I've not heard one word.
So do we have, cause this was brought up, there was a issue with the utility bill and shut off too. Do we have, any kind of a plan where somebody who was struggling can come in and is there any kind of assistance? Cause I know like with your power bill, I think, or you get those emails all the time, you know, you can get on this kind of assistance or something like that. Do we have anything like that?
Staff, and they work a lot with people.
Well, we have like the equal pay program, so they can divide their average payments up throughout the entire year. I don't think that our
policy doesn't allow a payment
allows for
plan.
any kind of payment plan, so
Like it specifically
equal pay is
doesn't allow it.
the only option that we offer.
So if you come in and you're like, I can't pay all my water bill today, please don't shut it off. We have no option for that. It's just sorry, we have to shut it off.
Yeah, bring it current, we should know. And that's typical of all utilities.
I don't think so, like gas and, Power.
Gas is actually free for,
is it, cause they always send out those things on your bills that say if you have, if you.
gas
have
and
a
power are no
problem-
different when it comes to cold months.
Mm,
Public Safety Commission says they have to give them some
some leeway.
leniency there.
Yeah, I was just curious more than anything. I don't know what the right thing to do.
I don't see any reason.
We went through
to-
this ordinance quite thoroughly, probably when Terry first came out, so I'm trying to balance, probably look, but we used to work with people and they got further behind.
It's
A big can of worms.
We
Yeah.
got abused,
Yeah.
basically.
And so that's when the council gave us direction to change the ordinance and pass the ordinance.
And I think the first couple of reports since then were everything good and so much smoother since then.
And I know you've been emailing people that are turn on, the connection fee, the $75 and why we charge
Sure.
that.
Sure.
It is difficult, I don't know how what's one person's issue versus
Yeah.
another one.
Are we in
Get
line
in
with
the
other
weeds.
cities
That
around?
puts us in an awkward position.
I mean, I agree, there's no reason to preemptively try to do something for an issue that isn't, we're not really facing. I mean, if this went on for several more months and there were other cities that are facing the same thing, revisit it, I don't see any reason to jump out in front of and visit it once, right?
Especially since we haven't had a request for anything yet.
I look at the people that oversee those people, and look at Alan, I've not heard of anything come through in our city. But you have some people that, this started up oddly because of IRS and
Yeah.
the TSA people.
lot more.
Where they're having to work and not get paid, and I understand that, but how do we treat that versus any other employer?
Yeah.
So if you write a policy, that'd be.
I mean, if we start to get those requests,
Let's have a different discussion on that.
The only exception is if you work for a private company that's bad, you can quit and get a new job. This, you have to come back to work.
I was actually just thinking the same.
The government literally won't let a company force you to work and not pay you. That's against the law, so.
So anyway, we can certainly watch how this goes, but I know it's putting people in hardship. I don't know if there's any in Herriman or how much, but like you said, up at Hill Air Force Base, there's folks, and then IRS and, there's different places.
Have you got any opinion about it? So I know you've been getting the same things I've had, and watch this go back throughout our state.
Some cities are saying they might do it soft, some are doing it quietly, some are, but
But it's soft when you're giving direction to staff.
we don't wanna do soft, we don't wanna make a decision one way or the other.
Yeah.
That puts us in a really bad
Yeah,
position.
We
for
don't wanna
sure.
do that. We
Sorry to bring it up, but I can't.
No, it's
I
okay.
thought
get along.
You might
Thanks
hear
for
something
bringing
about
this
it, and I wanted to bring your attention, so we have our clear
If
direction.
you hear about it, we can do something, but we'll wait till you tell us that, so we just wanna bring it to your attention. Like Brett said, this has been going on for a couple days with Brett and his friends. We don't have a clear,
Right, that's fine.
That's the network we work in, and it's actually good to hear it.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
we're maybe
It's on the radar.
maybe a day ahead of it.
Well, and that's the thing, is that being that we have, in my opinion, being that we haven't had any requests for it, there's no reason for us to jump out in front of it, like Councilman Henderson said, so, if it becomes an issue in our city, please bring it back to us, we can discuss again, but for now, I would say, let's just leave it where we are.
hopefully it's done in a month, or we got 3 more weeks before that's it. Okay.
That's all I had on my list that didn't get crossed off, so.
Okay, so I will accept a motion to adjourn the city, or to go into closed session.
Motion to do that.
You have to read the whole thing.
You gotta identify the purpose.
Motion to temporarily recess city council meeting? Alright, to convene in, see, I'll always mess it up. To convene in closed session for the purpose to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation and the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property as provided by Utah Code annotated 52-4-205.
Second.
A motion and a second. Councilman Henderson?
Aye.
Councilman Horn?
Aye.
And I would vote aye.
You know,
That motion passes.
Go home.
Well,
Change
it
my
only
vote.
took two of us
Change
that
my
said no, yeah.
No, the vote's over, man, that's done.
Can I just get some direction? I'd like to reverse the way they were read on that vote, for property first.